That morning, the sky over Crownville was coated in a pale, silent gray. Heavy clouds hung low over the rooftops of tall buildings, and the street below was still wet from the rain the night before, cold and damp like memories that had not yet dried. Emma, a young woman with her hair tied neatly and a quiet look in her eyes, walked carefully along the sidewalk. In her hand was a small plastic bag holding a stale sandwich and a pair of worn-out gloves. Her blue uniform had been cleaned thoroughly, but could not hide the passage of time with loose threads at the hem and fabric, so thin that light could shine through. On her feet were shoes that were nearly falling apart, the soles half detached, and making soft squelching sounds with every step, as if the whole world had chosen to ignore her existence. Still, Emma walked on her small frame, moving forward down the wide street, her eyes fixed ahead without hesitation. She had to be on time for her shift at Crownville Towers, even if she was only a nameless cleaner in one of the most luxurious buildings in the city. As she neared the curve that led to the main avenue, she heard an engine roar in the distance. A sleek white SUV sped toward her at a speed clearly beyond the limit. Its tires sliced through a large puddle right by the sidewalk. In one brief moment, before Emma could step back, the muddy water splashed all over her. The icy water hit her face, soaked her hair and her uniform, and drenched the sandwich in her bag. 1 second later, the car's tinted window rolled down. Inside, a woman with perfectly curled hair, bright red lipstick, and oversized sunglasses appeared. She glanced at Emma with a look of disdain laced with amusement. Her voice cut through the cold, wet air, telling Emma that she should learn to stay further from the road. Then the window rolled back up, the engine roared once more, and the SUV vanished into traffic as if it had never stopped. Emma stood still for a long moment. Mud streamed down her cheek and dripped onto her neck. Her shirt clung to her skin, and her wet hair stuck to her weary face. She did not cry. She did not shout or wave her fists like people in movies fighting for justice. She just took a deep breath, bent down to pick up the soggy sandwich, adjusted her shoelaces, and continued walking. There was no anger in her eyes, only the resignation of someone who had grown used to injustice until it no longer felt unusual. Across the street, a black car was parked near the curb. Inside sat a man who had witnessed everything. He said nothing. His gaze remained steady. He narrowed his eyes at the moment the muddy water flew through the air, at the flicker of cruelty in the woman's glance, at the soundless laugh that needed no hiding. He recognized her. Vanessa Johnson, daughter of a major real estate mogul and a well-known figure in the city's fashion scene. A woman admired for her impeccable style and sharp tongue. But what she did not know was that this morning her action had not gone unnoticed. Someone had seen it, someone she would never imagine caring about a cleaner covered in mud. The man in the car was Ethan. He was not someone who enjoyed gossip, nor did he like interfering in other people's lives. But the image of a small woman standing on the sidewalk, drenched and humiliated without a single word of protest, stirred something deep and familiar in him. He picked up his phone, his voice calm and steady. "Find that girl for me. I want to know everything about her." Outside, Emma was nearing Crownville Towers. Her footsteps left wet marks on the stone pavement, trails of water and mud tracing her path. Her face remained lowered, but in her eyes was a quiet fire that could not be put out. No one knew, but that morning before the sunlight broke through the clouds, a silent encounter had taken place. One person had been shamed without complaint. Another had mocked without knowing they were being watched. And someone from the shadows had begun a plan. not for revenge, but to prove that kindness, when given at the right time and to the right soul, could change the course of an entire life. Emma stepped through the side entrance of Crownville Towers, the one used mostly by service staff. The polished stone floor bore clear marks of mud left by her worn-out shoes. The air inside felt cold in a different way. Not the kind of chill that comes from a rainy morning, but the kind that grows from indifference and rules. Before she could reach the locker room, Mr. Clark, the ground floor supervisor, called out like a warning bell. "Emma, you are late again." He barked, his eyes narrowing as they scanned her soaked and messy appearance. She stammered, "I was," her voice fading as she clutched her bag tighter. "I was splashed by a passing car. I tried to clean up, but..." "No excuses," Mr. Clark interrupted. "Clean the floor before the guests arrive. I do not want to see a single spot of mud." Emma lowered her head. She did not argue. She did not explain further. She knew this place had no room for personal feelings. Everyone had their job, and most were too tired to care about a girl splashed with dirty water. She entered the locker room, silently opened locker number 16, and pulled out an old backup uniform. The fabric still smelled faintly of cheap bleach. She changed quietly, using paper towels to wring the water from her hair before tying it up. The worn gloves slipped onto her hands like muscle memory. No one asked how she was. No one looked at her with sympathy. There were only a few quick glances, some light head shakes, and one or two hushed whispers that no one bothered to hide. Emma paid no attention. She had never expected anything from people like herself. Those who also wore the same gloves bent their backs to clean the floor in silence and went home to small rented rooms at the end of the day. She stepped into the hallway with her mop and bucket, starting from the reception corridor. She wiped away each speck of dirt and footprint carefully, inch by inch. The water in the bucket slowly darkened, and the chill from the gloves seeped deep into her bones. But Emma kept her hands moving steady and precise, as if each stain she erased was a small piece of dignity being restored. She did not do the job because she loved it. She did it because she had to. Because she was the sister of an 8-year-old girl named Olivia who was still asleep back in their one-room apartment in West Pine. Because she could not afford to lose this job, even if it meant scrubbing toilets or taking out trash, when the rest of the city raised their glasses at boardroom tables and sealed deals with handshakes. Every time she heard a service bell ring, she tightened her grip on the old gloves, older than her time in the building, and kept going. But she still held on to one thing. She never complained. Elsewhere in the city, several blocks away on the highest floor of a glass tower that reflected the silver-gray sky, Ethan sat in a silent office. The room blocked out all noise with soundproof panels and a minimalist design that left nothing unnecessary. In front of him lay a freshly delivered file. On top was a printed photo, not sharp, but clear enough to show a young woman smiling gently beside a small child who held her tightly. Her name was Emma Davis, 23 years old, working 2 cleaning jobs at 2 different locations. She lived in West Pine, a poor district, and had lost her mother to illness 2 years ago. She was raising her younger sister alone. Ethan rested his finger on the photo, tapping softly on Emma's face, and murmured she did not deserve this. His assistant, an older woman with sharp features, glanced at him curious. "Do you want me to do something?" Ethan looked up, eyes returning from a distant thought. "Not yet," he said slowly. "Let me watch a little longer." The answer surprised her. Ethan had never hesitated when it came to helping people. But this time, he did not want to be a savior. He did not want the girl to feel indebted. He wanted to understand her not through what she had lost, but through how she kept moving forward. Somewhere else in the city, inside a glossy penthouse apartment, Vanessa Johnson stood in front of a mirror, adjusting a gold necklace she had just received from a partner. Her phone buzzed nonstop with event invitations, messages from stylists, and waves of comments on social media. She was a fashion icon, a woman whose every word could start a trend. Thinking back to the morning incident, Vanessa merely shrugged and chuckled. That girl stood too close to the road. She should have known better. Then she took a sip of green smoothie, reapplied her bright red lipstick, and stepped out the door with the confident air of someone who truly believed the world existed to revolve around her. But not everyone turns away. Not everyone stays silent when something small happens. Some people like Ethan believe that silence is not indifference. Sometimes a quiet gaze from behind a car window can become the beginning of an entirely different life. Evening slowly descended upon the city like a thin curtain falling over a stage. The sky did not rain, but never brightened its dull gray light stretching across streets, storefronts, and tired faces. In the back courtyard of Crownville Towers, a place few visited unless to smoke or make secret phone calls, Emma sat curled up on an old plastic crate. In her hands was a small dry sandwich, its ends carelessly trimmed, wrapped in reused newspaper. A bottle of water rested by her foot. Her fingers trembled slightly as she unwrapped it, not from the cold, but from exhaustion. She looked at the sandwich as if it were a tiny dream, a fragile reward for enduring the day in silence. On the edge of her shirt was a smear of dried mud, clinging in small gray patches like wounds not yet healed. Still, she took a small bite, chewed slowly, her eyes glancing occasionally at her phone screen, hoping for a message from Olivia, her younger sister. Nothing came. Only the same quiet she had long grown used to. Across the street, beneath the shade of a large tree, a man stood holding a phone, pretending to scroll. But his eyes were fixed on the girl quietly eating. No makeup, no fur coats or designer sunglasses. Just one ordinary person among millions, yet something about her held his gaze. Ethan stood there silently, his focus not on her faded uniform or worn shoes, but on how she held her food, like it was the last precious thing of the day, on the calm resolve of someone who had been splashed with mud and still bore no resentment. He saw his mother in her eyes, a woman who had raised him alone by cleaning office buildings, who had quietly wiped away her own tears after each late-night shift. She had never asked for pity or help. She only wanted her son to live a better life. And he did. Ethan turned away before Emma could see him. In his mind, there was no detailed plan, only an urge that this girl deserved something good. Not pity, but a real chance. And sometimes chances do not begin with a signed contract or a new company, but with a quiet glance from across a crowded street. A few blocks away in a television studio, Vanessa sat with her legs crossed, beaming in front of the cameras. The interview was live, and the host praised her as a fashion icon, a modern woman who knew what she wanted. Vanessa nodded, answering each question smoothly, from her diet routine to her philosophy of success. Everyone on set watched with admiration, unaware that just hours earlier she had splashed a stranger with mud and laughed. And while the cameras focused on her smile in a quiet room somewhere, a blurry photograph was being printed. The image came from traffic surveillance. The face was unclear, but the white SUV and the figure leaning out the window were unmistakable. Attached to the photo was a small sticky note with a handwritten message in blue ink, just 4 words. Not everyone forgets. The envelope arrived at Vanessa's office that afternoon. She opened it right after a meeting, her relaxed expression quickly turning tense. She stared at the photo for a long moment, her brow furrowed. Then she tore the note and tossed the whole envelope into the trash. But there was one thing she could not throw away, the strange feeling creeping into her chest. A little unease, a little guilt, but most of all fear. Not because she felt she had done wrong, but because someone had seen her. Her arrogance had never prepared her for that. That evening back at Crownville Towers, Emma was gathering her cleaning supplies when she noticed a folded piece of paper tucked into her locker. At first, she thought it was a memo from management. But when she opened it, the handwriting made her pause. The words read, "Keep shining, the world sees you, even when others pretend not to." Emma stood there, motionless, eyes fixed on the note. She did not know who had written it, or why anyone would take the time to think of her. But for a moment, it felt as if someone had placed a hand gently on her shoulder, steady and warm. At that same time in Ethan's office, a camera feed from one of the hotel hallways played silently on his screen. He watched her read the note, watched her eyes turn soft, watched the small smile slowly spread across her face. It was enough to make him nod quietly to himself. He did not need her to know, not yet. He only needed her to hold on just a little longer. He believed things would change. And when the time came, he would be the one to open the first door, not with money, but with understanding. The next morning, as a soft layer of sunlight slipped through rain-soaked tree branches, Emma was already awake, preparing breakfast for her sister and tying her shoelaces carefully. Olivia looked up at her with bright eyes and a playful smile as she held her little lunchbox, promising to behave well and wait for Emma to come home. Their quick hug before parting felt like a thread holding Emma's heart together amid an uncertain life. She boarded the bus still wearing her old uniform since the clean one was hanging at home, not yet dry from yesterday's mud. The road to Crownville looked the same, with familiar turns and strangers who never noticed her presence, their eyes blank behind office windows. But something was different today. When Emma opened her locker, a small paper bag sat neatly inside. She reached out, hesitating for a second, then slowly unfolded it. Inside was a pair of new gray gloves, a warm sandwich wrapped tightly in foil, and a folded note. The handwriting was delicate, almost like fine strokes of art. To the girl who works with grace even when the world is unkind. No signature, no explanation, only a quiet presence that felt like a hug from far away. Emma brought the sandwich to her face and inhaled deeply the smell of egg and melted cheese wrapping around her like a memory. She took a small bite, the warmth and softness spreading through her mouth, filling her empty stomach, and slowly finding its way into the quiet corners of her heart. For the first time in many days, she felt seen as a human being. No one around her acted like anything had changed. People still rushed by, absorbed in their own tasks. But Emma knew someone had seen her. Not with pity or scrutiny, but with recognition. Across the city, in an office with tall glass windows overlooking the Central Park, Ethan sat silently watching footage from the hotel's internal camera. It showed Emma opening her locker, discovering the small gift, and then the faint smile that appeared on her face. He did not blink. His hand rested quietly on the desk. That moment was brief, but enough for someone like Ethan to believe that change did not always come like a storm. Sometimes all it took was the right breeze at the right time. He turned to his assistant and asked her to keep watching but not to interfere. She does not need to know someone is watching her. She just needs to know she is no longer invisible. At the television studio, Vanessa was behind the scenes getting her outfit adjusted before her second segment of the day. Her look remained perfect. Soft curls, just right makeup like morning mist, and her newest designer dress. But in her eyes was a flicker of restlessness. Messages kept coming in, some vague comments about a photo from earlier. No one named her, but many were now talking about the indecency of a woman in a white SUV and the sympathy they felt for a girl who had been splashed with mud. Vanessa scoffed, tossed her phone aside, and dismissed it all. But a crack had appeared in her confidence. Small and unclear, but it was there. She was not used to being reflected in someone else's mirror, especially one she had not chosen. And this time she could not control what people were beginning to see. That afternoon, Ethan made a decision. He called the regional director of the hotel chain, his voice calm but firm. "I want her promoted." There was a pause on the other end. "You mean the cleaner?" "Yes, move her to the VIP floor." "Better pay lighter duties." The director hesitated, but eventually agreed. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant. He was not doing this to redeem someone else's guilt. He simply believed that some people did not need to beg for opportunity. They only needed to be seen at the exact moment they were still trying. That evening, as Emma was mopping the wide hallway, Mr. Clark called her over. In his hand was a clipboard with names and employee codes. "Emma, starting tomorrow, you will be assigned to the upper level, VIP floor, new pay. Uniforms will be issued later this week." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "Sir, I did not apply for a promotion. No need to apply, it has already been approved," he replied curtly, then walked away. Emma stood there, mop still, in hand, eyes wide. She did not understand what was happening, did not know why luck had suddenly found her, but inside her a small light began to bloom. That night she told Olivia as they shared a small sandwich and giggled like they had just won the lottery. The little girl hugged her sister and said, "See, good things really do happen." Emma nodded, running her fingers through her sister's hair, still unsure if she was dreaming. But across the city, someone watching her smiled gently. Ethan knew this was only the beginning. And sometimes the smallest signs, when they reach the right person, can become the first step of a journey bigger than they ever dared to dream. The next morning, Emma stood in front of a small mirror in the staff changing room, adjusting the collar of her freshly issued uniform. The fabric felt softer, the stitching firmer, and the scent of new cloth still carried hints of wrapping paper. On the pocket was a small embroidered line, indicating her new role in the VIP service department. She gently touched it, still unsure whether any of this was truly happening. Since the day she started working at Crownville Towers, she had never once stepped foot onto the highest floors, those reserved for the wealthy guests who carried polished leather suitcases and wore fragrances that lingered long after they passed. But today, she was not just entering that world. She was part of the team that maintained its polished elegance, a role in a lifestyle she once believed was forever beyond her reach. Inside the employee elevator, the atmosphere was different. People around her were quiet. There were no casual jokes or small talk. A few glances flickered her way. Whispers floated through the air, just loud enough for her to catch fragments, like maybe she knows someone, or I do not see how she got moved upstairs overnight. Emma stayed silent. She had no answers, no explanations. She only knew that she had never asked for anything, never cut corners, or disappeared when work was hard. And maybe sometimes holding on to kindness through the roughest days was reason enough for life to open a different door. The VIP floor felt like another world. The scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air, the chandelier's light reflected on the spotless floor, and thick neutral-toned carpets softened every step. Emma moved quietly down the hall, her mop gliding like a gentle instrument, the wheels of her cart whispering like a calm breath across the soft carpet. She worked carefully, wiping down doorknobs, checking restrooms, clearing half-empty coffee cups from the guest lounge. Every movement was steady, precise, not rushed nor sluggish. No one acknowledged her presence, but she still carried a small smile, a quiet habit she had built for days when no one else smiled back. In the corner near the large window, a man sat reading a newspaper. Sunglasses shielded half of his face. His clothes were simple but refined. Emma barely glanced at him, just bowed politely as she passed. But before she walked away, he spoke in a low, steady voice. "Do you know the way to the Sky Lounge?" Emma turned, nodded slightly. "Yes, sir, I can take you there." They walked side by side, unhurried. Along the way, the man asked softly, "How long have you worked here?" "Almost 2 years," she answered. "Do you like it?" She hesitated. "I do not think anyone dreams of mopping floors or restocking bathroom supplies, but I am grateful. This job feeds me and my sister." The man paused, looking at her with an expression free of judgment. "You do more than clean. You give everything around you a sense of value." Emma gave a quiet laugh, almost by reflex, then bowed her head. "Thank you." She had no idea that the man was Ethan. He never introduced himself, never mentioned his position. He simply observed. He had never liked flashy meetings or creating the feeling that he was handing out favors. He believed that if someone could be kind and dedicated even when no one was watching, that was the kind of person worth trusting and supporting. That afternoon, Vanessa sat across from her father in a high-end restaurant, a glass of wine swirling in her hand, though her lips had not touched it. She was visibly irritated, her voice sharp as she complained about rumors spreading online. A photo of a white SUV splashing mud on a young girl was circulating again, with comments questioning the character of the privileged. Vanessa was furious, calling it a smear campaign, the jealousy of small-minded people. Her father said nothing at first. He took a slow sip of his wine, then finally replied in a calm tone, "Maybe someone is holding up a mirror, and you are just not used to seeing your real face." Vanessa fell silent. Her pride wavered in that moment. Later that evening, after her shift, Emma opened her locker. There was no sandwich, no new gloves, just a small bouquet wrapped in plain white paper. No sender's name, no note. She picked it up and inhaled the gentle scent of wildflowers, standing still for several minutes. Someone had seen her. Not to mock or measure her, but to quietly remind her that light does not always come from a grand stage or roaring applause. Sometimes it comes in silence, in an unnamed recognition, in a tender gaze from behind a closed door. And Emma understood. She was not alone. There were people who never spoke a word, never made themselves known, but they were the reason someone kept walking, even when the path was shadowed. That morning began with a light drizzle, the raindrops tapping gently against the window glass, forming little circles that faded one by one with the rhythm of passing time. Emma entered the hotel in a thin, damp coat, gripping her mop tightly as if it was an extension of herself. The VIP floor was busier than usual, with many international guests attending a major conference. Cleaning staff were clearly assigned their stations, and Emma was tasked with the main hall on the second floor. She got to work like any other day, sweeping away the lingering footprints on the polished stone floor, wiping down the stair railings, and adjusting the decorative flower vases. Every movement was soft and precise, with not the slightest carelessness. What she did not know was that in a shadowy corner behind a small supply room, someone else was quietly altering something in her cleaning cart. Tina was a longtime cleaning staff member at the hotel. She had once been considered the model employee, but since Emma's promotion to the VIP floor, her eyes had grown cold. Every word of praise that management gave, Emma felt like a sharp needle puncturing the pride that Tina had carried unchallenged for years. And like many who had once been the best, when they saw themselves being replaced, they did not choose growth. They chose sabotage. In just a few swift seconds, Tina swapped Emma's regular floor cleaner with a slicker solution, one with a high oil content known to make surfaces dangerously slippery. She did it fast, clean, and quiet. No one noticed. Less than an hour later in the grand hall, an elderly guest stepped onto the area Emma had just cleaned. The smooth soles of his shoes met the hidden slick. He slipped, falling hard and striking his head against the edge of a nearby seat. Shouts erupted. Security rushed in. Medical personnel were summoned. Emma froze. She looked back at the mop bucket, then at the guest being helped up, his forehead now marked with a dark bruise. All eyes turned to her. In the surveillance room, the hotel manager demanded the staff list for that section of the floor. When Emma's name was read, his voice dropped with disappointment. "Get her in my office now." Emma entered the manager's office with a heavy heart. The man behind the desk did not give her time to speak. He flipped open a file, declared her officially warned, and said any further mistakes would lead to contract termination. Emma tried to explain, her voice trembling with frustration. "I followed the standard procedure. I did not change the solution. I always used the correct cleaner." But no one listened. She left the room in silence, fists clenched, throat tight. All her efforts, everything she had fought for, seemed to collapse under the weight of a single incident. On the top floor, Ethan had just left a meeting when the news reached him. He stopped in the hallway, a chill pulling him still. Something did not feel right. He called his assistant and requested the security footage of the supply area. Within the hour, the video reached his hands. The scene was crystal clear. Tina bent over the cart, opened the storage, switched the bottles, then walked away as if she had never been there. Ethan said nothing. He simply picked up his phone and called the hotel manager. His voice was steady but carried steel. "Review the entire incident this morning. I want the facts in 1 hour." When Emma was called back into the office for the second time, the mood had shifted. The manager fumbled through an apology, explaining that an error had been made and the camera had shown she was not responsible. Emma did not say a word. She bowed slightly and left. But as the door closed behind her, her eyes welled up. Not because she had been wrongly blamed, but because for the first time someone had sought the truth on her behalf. For the first time, justice did not require her to cry, to beg, or to scream. That night, in the quiet darkness of their small room, Olivia hugged her sister and asked softly, "Did something bad happen today?" Emma smiled, shook her head, and gently stroked the girl's hair. "It was just a longer day than usual, sweetheart." She did not explain the details. She did not want to burden her sister with worry, but deep down she knew one thing for sure. Someone had believed her when the world did not. Ethan stood on the 16th floor hallway, gazing through thick glass down at the glowing street below. He remembered the look in Emma's eyes as she walked out of the manager's office. Even after being cleared, she remained silent. No complaint, no self-praise. He had never met anyone like her, someone who kept doing their part with quiet strength, no matter what was said behind their back. And he understood something. If a person like that was given the right opportunity at the right moment, they would not just change their own life. They would change how others viewed decency itself. Ever since the incident where Emma was wrongfully accused and later cleared by security footage, everything around her seemed to shift in color. The hotel manager began greeting her with a nod. Some coworkers took the initiative to say hello or helped her move cleaning supplies to the VIP floor. But not every glance in the hallway was warm. Some avoided her eyes. Others whispered the moment she passed by, as if her newly recognized kindness had now become a reason for suspicion. Tina was suspended for 2 weeks. The day she left, she offered no apology, just shot Emma a sharp look before turning away like she was the one betrayed. Emma did not hold a grudge, but from that day on, she kept her distance. Her silence was not agreement. It was a choice to protect her own dignity. Ethan began showing up at the hotel more often, no longer hiding behind sunglasses or a baseball cap. He chose quiet corners where he could watch Emma work, see her talk to guests occasionally, help a coworker pick up a fallen towel, or adjust a misplaced flower. One afternoon during her break, he greeted her with a simple wave and a familiar smile. The first time he called her by name, Emma smiled and teased, "You're here again. You must really like this hotel." Ethan answered softly, "I like watching something grow a little more every day." His eyes did not hide anything, but neither did he rush to explain. One afternoon, while Emma was rearranging flowers in the grand lobby, she was asked to come up to a meeting room on the 8th floor. Inside was a small table, and on it lay a hardcover folder. Ethan was already seated, no assistant, no hotel manager, just him, and a calm smile. He slid the folder toward her. A full scholarship in hotel management evening classes, so she could continue working at Crownville during the day. All expenses covered. Emma froze, her fingers trembling as she turned the first pages. She could not speak, her eyes filled with emotion. Ethan's voice was gentle. "I'm not doing this out of pity. You never asked for anything, but you deserve everything." She looked up, her voice caught in her throat. "Why me?" Ethan held her gaze. "Because you remind me of the one who raised me with silence and resilience, the way you live your life now." News of the scholarship spread through the hotel within hours. Most coworkers congratulated her. Some sighed in silence, but not everyone stayed quiet. Vanessa, upon hearing the news, exploded. She could not believe the girl she once splashed with mud was now the center of attention. In a moment of rage, she paid a shadowy blogger to post a piece with a suggestive title accusing Emma of using her relationship with Ethan to change her fate. The article included blurry photos of Emma talking to Ethan, along with fabricated stories and vicious comments. Emma saw the post during her lunch break. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from coworkers, a few confused looks from guests, and the awkward silence from management. She turned her phone off, neatly folded her uniform, and asked for half a day off. She was not angry. What she felt was more like an emptiness, like all her honest efforts had just been packaged into something cheap and sold to the public. Ethan did not stay silent. The very next day, he called a press conference. Standing in front of dozens of cameras and microphones, he spoke with a steady, warm voice. Emma Davis is not a gold digger. She is the most hardworking, quiet, and honest person I have ever met. If anyone still doubts her, maybe it's time to ask what really matters in this world, money or dignity. The room erupted in applause. When Emma heard the news, she broke down crying in her small apartment. Never had she imagined that someone would believe in her enough to defend her honor in front of the world. That same afternoon, a small package arrived at her door. Inside was a single red rose and a handwritten note. Let the world whisper, I'll be the one to speak your truth. Emma looked at the flower, her hand trembling gently. In that moment, she understood something. That love did not need to be loud. And sincere protection always found its way to those who live with quiet integrity, even when no one is watching. A year after the mudslinging incident, Emma walked into the grand lobby of Crownville Towers in a soft sky blue dress. There were no sparkling embellishments, no flashy designer labels, but every step she took made heads turn. A simple pearl hairpin adorned her hair, elegant yet unassuming, and in her eyes was the calm of someone who had weathered many storms without losing herself. The ballroom shimmered under crystal chandeliers. The guest list featured some of the most powerful names in real estate, tourism, and hospitality. Crownville was celebrating its 20th anniversary. And among the hundreds of guests in attendance, the girl who was once a janitor was introduced as the guest of honor. Ethan stood beside her in a charcoal gray suit, his eyes never straying from the woman who had reshaped his entire world. He did not hold her hand, nor did he need to say anything, because the look in his eyes said it all. The music paused. The host invited Emma to the stage. She walked slowly toward the microphone, holding a plaque that read, "For strength, humility, and the spirit that has inspired us all." In that moment, the entire room fell silent. No one remembered she once scrubbed floors or was once scolded for being late after stepping into a puddle of mud. She took a deep breath and glanced down at the row where Olivia sat, gripping a bouquet of red roses with a beaming smile. A year ago, I was just a girl in a worn-out uniform, broken shoes, and a mud-streaked face. Emma began, her voice soft but clear. I was not anyone special. Most days, I felt invisible. But then one cruel act forced me to pause on the path I thought I knew. And in that pause, a kind gaze gave me the strength to stand up and keep going. What I have today is not luck. It is because I refuse to give up. And I know I am standing here not just for myself, but for everyone who has ever felt small, overlooked, or cast aside for how they look or where they come from. She paused, her eyes finding Ethan in the crowd, then continued. I used to think that people in power never saw people like me, but I was wrong. Someone saw me, believed in me, and helped me believe in myself. And today I want to say, kindness when held firmly will always find its way to shine. The room rose in a standing ovation. There were slow claps, quiet tears, and even embarrassed glances from some who had once looked down on her. Emma bowed her head and stepped down from the stage as gentle music resumed. After the event, when most guests had left, Emma returned to the place where everything began. She stood at the street corner where she had been splashed with mud. The street lights cast a soft glow beneath her feet. The road had been repaved with clean stones. The sidewalks raised slightly. No puddles could form there anymore. She slipped off her heels, held them in her hand, and walked barefoot on the cool stone. Ethan joined her quietly, removing his shoes to walk beside her. Emma looked down at the pavement, the same spot that once brought her shame, and said softly, "I walk this street not to remember the humiliation, but to leave it behind. This is the last place I want to keep the old pain. From now on, only the beauty remains." Ethan nodded. He had never seen someone rise from pain with such calm. No resentment, no fanfare, just a woman brave enough to choose a new path, even when it was never smooth at the start. Emma's story began to spread after a small blog post written by a hotel staff member. It was picked up by news sites recounting the journey from mud to scholarship, from janitor to honored guest. Headlines drew attention. The girl who changed a young billionaire's view of the world. Comments poured in from single mothers, working students, and others who had been overlooked and had never heard a thank you. Emma was unsure how to react to the sudden fame. She simply kept her routine. She worked her shifts, attended night classes, and sometimes left early to have dinner with her sister. Vanessa, on the other hand, faced consequences. The defamatory post against Emma was traced back to her. The corporate board asked her to step down temporarily. Her company accounts were frozen. Her father, who once defended her every mistake, said only one sentence: "When you learn to respect others, you will understand the true value of being respected." Vanessa did not respond. But for the first time in her life, she could not use money or fame to erase her mistakes. One calm evening, Ethan came to pick up Emma in a modest car. No chauffeur, no security. They dined on a small rooftop restaurant where only the breeze and a few candle flames kept them company. Ethan looked at her for a long time and finally said, "You changed me." Emma lowered her eyes, smiling shyly. "I just lived the way I was raised." But Ethan shook his head. "You lived in a way that made others relearn how to live." That night, they walked beneath a row of trees, the yellow streetlight brushing softly across their shoulders. When they reached the familiar intersection, Ethan stopped and pointed to the spot where she had once been humiliated. That was the beginning. But Emma shook her head. "No, that wasn't the beginning. That was the moment someone thought they could hurt me. The real beginning was when someone saw me and decided I deserved better." Ethan smiled and offered his hand. "You turned mud into a flower." They held hands and walked toward the long, straight road ahead. No more words were needed. Because sometimes the most beautiful stories are the ones that never need an ending.